Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special Wednesday edition of the Tracy Show. I'm joined by my guest, who I'll let introduce himself here in a bit. Hopefully, we'll get some of our regulars to come in and post some questions. But again, this is not our normal night. Normally, we're yesterday. I didn't tape yesterday because I got off work. I closed my eyes, and the next thing I knew, it was Wednesday. So I didn't do a show yesterday. So I said, "Oh, I got an interview today." But this show would normally air on Wednesday. So before I get to my guest, I'm going to pay a whole bunch of bills. Subscribe to this page. I'm up to 126. I'm so happy, but I want to ease it up to 1,000 by the end of this year. So if you're not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe, and again, subscribe. Um, that's the donate button. Do that too. But yeah, well, one definitely subscribe to this page. And I'm trying to get onto it because it puts it 3 times now. So you can also donate at Buy Me a Coffee /Tracy Media LLC. We got levels starting at $2. They go all the way up to $5. I can't spell, but if you could support me on my Rumble page, I'm still waiting for 4 more followers before I can go live because I plan on taking one of my 4 shows there exclusively. So I need 4 more people to just jump on Rumble and just follow me so I can have that. Please remember to like us on Facebook. And those are the announcements. So govern yourself accordingly. As I said, we have Gary Swing as our guest tonight, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, what office he's running for, and then we'll start the interview in earnest.
All right. My name is Gary Swing. I've been a perennial alternative party candidate. I've been on the ballot 12 times already, 7 times as a Green Party candidate for various offices, once as a pacifist party candidate, once with a Boiling Frog Party for president in Vermont, once with the Natural Law Party many years ago, and twice with the Unity Party. I ran as a Unity Party candidate for Secretary of State in 2022 in Colorado and for U.S. Representative in 2020. I'm again putting my name in as a candidate for the Unity Party's nomination for U.S. Representative in Colorado, this time in the 3rd Congressional District, which is Western Colorado. It was the closest congressional race in the country in 2022. The winning candidate, Lauren Boebert, won by 546 votes, as opposed to her challenger, Adam Frisch, Democratic nominee. I'm filing for this particular office because it was the closest congressional race in the country. I've been an advocate for alternative voting systems, particularly proportional representation, for decades. I'm trying to put myself in a position where I might be considered a spoiler in a very closely contested, very expensive race. My intention is to run a $0 campaign against candidates who will spend millions of dollars on their campaigns. Adam Frisch has already raised $4.4 million for his Democratic challenge to Lauren Boebert. And it's rated as a toss-up district by Cook Partisan Index. So it's a very close race, and it's expected to be hard fought by both major parties and by the outside interests spending money outside of the 2 main parties' official campaigns. I'm also the secretary of the Unity Party of Colorado. It's an alternative party that has ballot access only in the state of Colorado. The Unity Party identifies itself as being neither left nor right. It's actually now a political party of free thinkers and political independents. They offer a path for ballot access for candidates in Colorado who are otherwise shut out of the system. The candidates for the Unity Party range all across the political spectrum. We have progressives, we have conservatives, we have socialists, we have independents and free thinkers. My background, of course, was with the Green Party. But we have an open and democratic process for nominating candidates, and we welcome people to seek our nomination. We have automatic ballot access by party assembly for county, state, and congressional offices, as well as for president, only in the state of Colorado.
We're going to have a lot to talk about. Okay, so, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You're running in the District 3 in Colorado.
That's correct, yes.
What cities do those include? Because I'm not sure. Is Denver one of those cities or no?
No, Denver's
Okay.
not part of that. This is mostly western Colorado and some of southeastern Colorado. It's a very large geographic district. It includes Pueblo, Colorado, Durango, Grand Junction, Aspen, Cortez, Alamosa, Craig, Colorado, which is northwestern Colorado. It's essentially all of the western half of Colorado, and then it curves around a little bit to the southeast, down past Pueblo.
And what is the population size?
I think it's about 700,000. I'm estimating. I'm not sure if that's correct, but it's one of 8 congressional districts in the state. My friend here says it's 770,000 people.
I was like, wow, you guys have more people than the whole United States. I'm like, okay, hey, yeah. We have 100 million people there.
Yeah.
And most of them live in Colorado.
Not million.
Yeah, that's just about, okay, so, boy, you give me a whole lot to ask about. Okay, so I'll start with the normal question. Why is it that you are running?
I am running... I'm running partially to promote the idea of proportional representation, the idea that everyone deserves fair representation in government, not just the minority or the majority, not just the Democrats or Republicans, but everyone should have representation that reflects their party's share of support in the population. Everyone should be able to have a vote that counts. So let's say your party gets 5% of the vote, you should get 5% of the seats in the legislature or 5% of the seats in Congress. This is a system that's used in 95 countries around the world. Most countries that use it have some kind of a party list format to it, so that you get representation by party. Other countries like Ireland have a single transferable vote, where you rank candidates in your order of preference, but it's in multi-member districts. So let's say that you have an 8-member district, you would need at least 1/9 of the vote to win a seat under single transferable vote, meaning you'd need at least 11% in an 8-member district to win representation. That's why European countries in Latin America, Africa, parts of Asia, have multiple parties in government, 8, 9, 10 parties, whereas we only have 2 parties in government in the United States. Proportional representation is an issue that I've pushed through the decades. I've also been an anti-war candidate. That's what got me involved in politics in the first place. I call for ending U.S. Military intervention overseas, shutting down foreign military bases, abolishing nuclear weapons, limiting the military to non-offensive defense of the United States. I'm an environmental candidate. I'm concerned about human impact on the environment and leaving room for wildlife diversity. Human beings over the past 200 years or so have almost completely replaced wildlife, mammal species across the earth. 10,000 years ago, before domesticated agriculture, we had humans were less than 1% of the biomass of all mammal life on Earth. Now we're about 60% of biomass. Livestock is about 36% of biomass, and wildlife, land mammals, are only about 4% of biomass. So we've totally altered our environment so that humans have created largely an artificial environment on Earth, not leaving space for the natural world or for sustainable ecosystem. So this is a very tight race. Both major party candidates, leading candidates right now, are at about 43% in the polls. And it's a district where I think that an alternative party candidate can get some attention because we'll be treated as a potential threat, a spoiler threat. I really don't believe that the spoiler argument is legitimate, but I'm putting myself in a position where I would be accused of being a potential spoiler. So my goal is to cover the margin between the Democrats and the Republicans in the race, and to use this as an opportunity to talk about alternative systems where everyone gets representation.
So, and that's where I have my question at, because if I'm interpreting this right, and please again correct me if I'm wrong, and this is just a yes or no question, is your goal to win that particular race?
No, I recognize that I have no possible chance of winning this race.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure before I ask that question, because I'm in a totally different mindset. Because I'm like, okay, why am I running if I don't want to win? But you've outlined that you want to bring attention to this proportional representation. Heard about it on the fringes, but I've never heard it brought before. I've heard of ranked choice voting, which
Right.
I try to understand, and I had someone explain it to me, and I'm still, because I'm so used to the traditional way, whoever gets the most votes wins. I
Right.
understand it. It's a pretty easy thing to kind of grasp. Not to say it's a good system, but I'm just saying it's easy to grasp. But what
Right.
you're talking about is, you said it yourself, if someone gets 5% of the vote, they should get 5% of the representation.
Right.
My question or concern is that 5% for all groups, no matter their racial beliefs, uh, their if they're anti-Semitic, does that just apply all across the board, or are you wanting to leave some groups out of that 5%?
It's just based on the vote turnout. So anyone who gets more than a certain threshold of representation, anyone who gets more than a certain threshold of votes gets proportional representation. So if the Republicans get 50% of the vote, they get 50% of the seats. If Libertarians get 3% of the vote under the system that we're proposing for Colorado, they would get 3% of the seats in the state legislature. But everyone across the board would have representation as long as they pass a certain threshold. And the threshold is often set up under a party list system. It varies typically from like a low of a 1% threshold for the party list vote. 5% is at the high end of a party list threshold. But this is a system that's used in most modern industrialized nations for electing their legislatures. 95 countries use it to elect their national parliaments now. And there are different ways to set it up. You can either have, like the single transferable vote is a ranked system. Ranked choice voting is a broad term, but in the United States, it's often used as to refer exclusively to instant runoff voting, which is a winner-take-all voting method in single-member districts. Instant runoff voting is really designed to prevent political minorities in any given district from having representation. Only the majority is represented under the instant runoff voting form of ranked choice voting. Single transferable vote would be the multi-member district version of ranked choice voting. That means you have more than one member elected from a district, whether it's a small 3-person council district or a 9-person district. And single transferable vote can be combined with party list votes, which is what the group Best Democracy proposes. With Best Democracy's proposal, we would have 80% of the seats in the legislature elected from, say, 7-member districts, where you would need about 12.5% of the vote to win one of the district seats. But then the remaining 20% of the state legislature or Congress would be elected from party lists. So you would vote for your favorite party as a second part of the ballot. whether it's Green, Libertarian, Unity Party, Democrat, Republican, Constitution Party, whatever it might be. And you have additional members who are elected on top of the district seats. And that provides for leveling from the House, from the from the multi-member district seats. So overall representation is proportional to the party list vote.
And this is at all. This is state level and for congressional senator seats. I'll say it that way.
Well, it would be for U.S. representative. We propose to abolish the U.S. Senate. The U.S. Senate is based on states, not based on population.
Yeah, because everybody gets two, right?
Right?
Everybody gets two no matter what. Okay.
Right. Whether it's Wyoming, that has a tiny population, or California, which has 68 times the population of Wyoming, they each get 2 Senate seats. And that totally distorts the whole idea of representation. Representation is for people. It's not for land. It's not for geography.
Okay. So you're only proposing this for U.S. Congress. So not in Colorado.
Oh yes, we're proposing this at all levels of government.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Are you doing this? Okay.
Yes.
So
City council,
yes.
county.
So yeah, here comes my question, because you said abolish the Senate, but there's one office that you left out.
President.
And yes, and I was going to say, okay, so there can only be one president.
Right.
So how would you and there can only be, if this is just nationwide, there can only be one governor, one president.
Right. There are various ways to deal with that situation. I think the electoral college system that we have right now is about the worst election system in the world. And we can reform presidential elections in certain ways. It's essential, I think, that we abolish the electoral college, which is a very archaic and backward system. One way to deal with the presidential race is to have a national popular vote, where you simply the candidate who gets the most votes wins. There are alternative voting methods you can use, such as instant runoff voting. You can elect presidential electors proportionally, or you can abolish presidential elections entirely and have a parliamentary system, which is used in many countries. Under a parliamentary system, you have the Congress or the legislature elect the executive. And then the executive has strictly limited authority, strictly limited powers, and can be removed on a vote of no confidence at any time. And I think there's an argument to be made for a parliamentary system for selecting governors and presidents. Presidential elections, I think, are the most expensive, longest, most meaningless, most absurd elections in the world. And we know, however we vote, we're going to get people who really aren't going to change policy much. Foreign policy certainly doesn't change much from one administration to another. We have a government where the presidency has been allowed to usurp far too much authority. It's essentially become a military dictatorship. There's way too much focus on this one person. And if we're concerned that the president is a threat to democracy, to freedom, to human rights, that means that office has too much power. There's too much power in the hands of one person. I think it's important to limit the authority that a single person can have, decentralize authority, put more authority in the hands of the legislature, in the hands of the people, and not let the president or the governor have absolute authority.
Yeah, that's where, because I wanted to make sure I understand. I understood you were saying, because I'm like, well, what about senators? So we wouldn't even elect senators. Although I kind of still don't. What you said, it's clear, but not as clear. It's like I gotta process it through my mind, because I'm like, okay, you're eliminating 100 seats.
Right. Not necessarily. We can also increase the size of Congress. And one of the
That
things,
okay, I was gonna say, are you gonna like just stick them in Congress? It's like okay, well they're technically one body. They're
yeah,
technically the Congress anyway. We just separate them out and say congressional and
mhm.
senators. But they're technically one body.
It's been a long time since the size of the U.S. Congress has been increased. So they're really not very close to the electorate as it is. Each U.S. representative represents hundreds of thousands of people, at
Yeah.
least in theory.
So here's
Yes.
another question I want to ask in terms of this. So gerrymandering
Mm-hmm.
is a terrible, awful thing that I wish I knew how to defeat because, and I can't figure it out. It seems like this would be a good way
Yes.
to squash, people, especially Republicans, because I'm sure the Democrats do it too, drawing districts that are in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about why this would be a good way for gerrymandering to, well, I would say ultimately disappear.
Gerrymandering is a product of the single member district winner take all voting system. So it's inherently gerrymandered in most cases. Most districts under the existing election system are heavily dominated by one political party or the other. And you know that if you live in Denver, you're always going to have a Democrat elected. I would have said until recently in Colorado Springs, you'd know that a Republican will always be elected, but they just elected an independent mayor, which is an interesting shift in the dynamics down there. But once you have proportional representation and you use multiple member districts with a proportional voting method, then people identify their own communities of interest by the voting pattern, not by lines drawn on a map. So if you want to have a party that represents, say, the African American community, you don't have to be concentrated into a majority minority district in a city. Your vote counts equally no matter where you are. And let's say that you have, if there's a party that represents your interests particularly, then no matter where you are, you get your fair share of representation. If you represent a smaller party, if that's what you want, then your votes count equally no matter whether you live in a rural area, a city, the suburbs. People identify what it is that represents them rather than having the district lines define how representation is determined.
And I see we have some people watching. You can put your comments in here or your questions. I'd be glad to take them. And we have a record. We have a Twitch comment. First Twitch comment right out the bat. I think this is Valdez BTW. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Says, hey, what's up? But yes, please put your questions in. I will try my best to get to them, but put the questions in. Thank you very much for doing that. Um, so I want to talk about when you. This is a broad question, so I want to make sure I'm asking it in a way that makes sense. How, in terms of percentages, just where you are at? No, you can answer it nationwide. How much support would you say there is for the idea that you are presenting?
Wow. I don't know that I have statistics about that. My friend is saying 47%. Where's that coming from?
Tracy,
Hmm?
Canipia poll
Oh, okay.
that want third parties.
Oh, well, okay. My friend is saying that Quinnipiac polls,
Canipia.
polls says that 47% of people in the United States want to have a third major party in the United States. That doesn't say they want.
Yeah, but I was going to say, I'm talking about that's wanting proportional representation. That's a little different than third parties, right?
That's true. The thing is, people don't generally understand in the United States how to get from where we are to having viable third parties. And proportional representation is what makes alternative political parties viable. That's why you have 8 to 10 parties in Scandinavian countries in the national legislature, and why we don't in the United States. We haven't had a member of an alternative party elected to Congress since 1970. There's 7,383 state legislature seats across the country. None of them is held by a member of the Green Party. Only one is held by a libertarian, the third largest party in the country. And that's someone who was elected as a Republican in Vermont and then switched parties after he was elected. No candidate from the Libertarian Party or the Green Party, the fourth largest party in the country, has ever been elected to statewide office anywhere in the United States. There are fewer than 1 out of 1,000 small local offices in the United States that are held by a member of a party other than the Democrats or the Republicans. There are more than 519,000 elected offices in the United States. If we had a proportional representation system, we would have members of alternative parties now in Congress, in state legislatures, city councils, county commissioners. We'd have 5% of the seats in Congress for a party that gets that threshold of the vote, and we have none. So really, proportional representation is the way to get to having inclusive, fair representation of every political party. I'd say the Republicans are overrepresented in government now. They control most state legislatures, and a lot of that may be due to gerrymandering, but Republicans have representation greatly exceeding their share of support from the population. Democrats might or might not benefit from proportional representation. They might lose seats to alternative parties, but our whole political system is skewed to the authoritarian right in the United States. If 98% of the population are able to elect candidates who represent their views, I expect that you would see a shift to be more progressive, further to the left, less authoritarian. And proportional representation is the way to get there.
And you're saying, okay, so you're saying 47% now support an idea that's around that framework.
An idea, 47% want to have a viable alternative
third party. Right, okay.
Yeah.
So here comes my
And
next.
this is how you get there. And I think people don't know how to get there.
Mm-hmm. So that means that 53% are saying, I don't think so. Yeah. So how do you take that 53% and shrink that and increase the 47%?
Well, my friend Jesse at Best Democracy likes to ask people, would you rather be included in representation or would you rather be excluded? Who wants to be excluded? And pretty much everyone wants to have their voice heard. They want to have someone who represents them in government. And with proportional representation, everyone gets fair representation. That's the whole idea behind it. It provides better representation for women. It provides better representation for racial minorities in government. It provides fair representation for smaller parties, which are simply shut out of the system that we have in the United States now. So if you're not happy with the way that your party is going, you can join a smaller party and get representation, not feel like you have to vote for the candidate who is less evil than the candidate you most want to see not elected. So we would have a sincere voting system. You would vote for what you want, and in most cases, you would get what you want, as opposed to right now, where we have strategic or tactical voting. And there's constant pressure every election cycle saying, oh, you can't run as an alternative party candidate or a third party candidate because you're going to spoil the election. Well, there won't be spoilers under proportional representation because everyone gets representation that reflects their level of support in government. It doesn't exclude people. Almost everyone is included. You get 98% of the population electing people who represent their views. You get more choices on the ballot. Ballot access reform is an important part of that. If you keep people off the ballot in the first place, then they don't have the choices. And we see that with Democrats across the country talking about how they're trying to preserve democracy, and yet they sponsor legislation making it harder and harder for independent candidates and third-party candidates to get on the ballot.
Or they don't have debates. But that's a whole different show. Another thing that you said that really kind of caught my attention, to be honest, I've never had a candidate that has just outright said, I don't expect to win. So congratulations on that if you want to take it that way. But I've never had every candidate I've ever had on this type of show has always said, I'm gonna try my best to win, but if I get 5%, 2%, that's a goal.
Oh yeah.
When did you make up in your mind that your goal was the type of government that you were talking about and not necessarily to win? Because what I think of, well, if I win or when I win,
Right.
well, that'll make it easier to get to that point that where I actually want to be.
Right. I was involved with the Green Party pretty much from inception. I joined the Green Committees of Correspondence when I was in high school back in 1984, which was a precursor to the Greens actually running as political candidates in the United States. And I was at a Four Corners gathering of Green Party representatives from Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado back in, I think it was 1993. There was a guy named Stephen Hill, who was then with Citizens for Proportional Representation. It's since been renamed Fair Vote. And he made an argument at this Green Party gathering that in order for the Green Party to ever succeed as a viable political party in the United States and have fair representation, we need to start by changing the voting system and adopt proportional voting methods. And so I got involved with his organization. I read a lot about proportional representation at that time, and I agreed that this was a necessary first step for the Greens, or really for any alternative party, to become politically viable and successful in the United States. We see that the Greens have elected members of national parliaments in at least 30 countries, and almost all of them are elected by some party list form of proportional representation. The first time I was on the ballot as a candidate was in 1996. I ran as a Green Party candidate for state representative in Northeast Denver. I wanted to run for U.S. representative because I wanted to focus on a message of a nonviolent and humanitarian foreign policy, opposing the military-industrial complex, slashing the military budget, shutting down foreign military bases. I wanted to be an anti-war candidate. But the other members of the Denver Green Party said, why don't you run for the smallest partisan office you can as a Green? And we have to put someone on the ballot for some partisan office because of our party status being dependent upon that at the time. So I agreed to run for state representative, which in Denver, as a city and county, was the smallest partisan office available. It was the most Democratic, least Republican district in the entire state. For the last 5 elections had been uncontested by the Republican Party. I petitioned onto the ballot, got on the ballot, and then the Republicans nominated a candidate by vacancy committee. I campaigned door to door. I distributed tens of thousands of pieces of campaign literature. I participated in debates. I was in candidate forums and newspapers. The Urban Spectrum newspaper published an article I wrote about proportional representation. I tried to run to win in 1996. Walked door to door, and I got 8.5% of the vote. It was a higher percentage than any other independent or third-party candidate in Colorado got for any state or federal office that year. But still, it was 8.5% of the vote, trying to run to win. The Republican was basically a line holder and didn't run much of a campaign. He got 13.5% of the vote. I put in a lot more effort campaigning than the Republican did, and I came in third. And I started looking at the history of alternative party vote results, first in Colorado, then nationally, and I realized this is not a system where alternative parties are viable. We really need proportional representation if you want to build something other than the Democrats or the Republicans. So after 1996, I stopped pretending that I was running to win. I said, this is what I stand for. If you like what I stand for, you're welcome to vote for me. But vote your conscience. Vote for what you want. Don't vote because you think candidate A can win, candidate C can't win, you don't like candidate B. Just, if you vote for what you want. Don't vote because you feel like you're being pressured or intimidated, or because you have to, because it's the only choice.
So we got Parker here who says, hey, and he has a follow-up question. Thank you, Parker, for posting this question. So he says, do you think Adam Frisch would be considered a moderate Republican if he were in a different, more blue state. I don't know who Adam Frisch is,
Right.
but apparently you must know who he is because I'm like, who? But go ahead.
Yes, Adam Frisch is considered the front runner for the Democratic nomination. He was the Democratic nominee for just
Oh,
this.
that's right. The guy
Right.
who almost beat Lauren Burkhardt. Ah, okay,
Right.
okay.
He got 49.9% of the vote as a Democrat in the last election. And in fact, he was a conservative independent for most of his life. He was a member of the Aspen Town Council. I think he joined the Democratic Party because he saw a way to get into Congress, not because he really represents the Democratic Party. And I would say he would be not necessarily a conservative Republican in today's environment, but at least a moderate Republican in a different state and a different system. He's Adam Frisch is someone who is basically trying to buy a seat in Congress, in my view. He doesn't have a campaign platform. He doesn't really have any issues. He focuses on attacking the Republican incumbent, Lauren Boebert. And his message is basically, I'm not Lauren Boebert, send me money.
Boy, we've never heard a president named Joe Biden ever say that one. We never heard that one.
Right. He sends out these campaign email messages for fundraising where he quotes Adam Kinzinger saying, Lauren Boebert is toast if Adam can get the money. And so on Twitter, I've posted pictures of toast and different ways toast can be prepared and comments about how expensive is this toast. Adam Frisch has already raised more than $4.4 million this early in the election cycle. When he ran in 2022, he joined the Democratic Party, switched his affiliation from unaffiliated to Democrat at the last minute so he could qualify to be a candidate for the Democratic Party in the following election. He bypassed the Democratic Party State Assembly, where they nominated another candidate, Sol Sandoval, who was much more progressive. And then he petitioned onto the ballot. He narrowly defeated Sol Sandoval in the primary election, spending a lot of money on that campaign. And then he narrowly lost the general election. So now we have another candidate who may be taken seriously. The mayor of Grand Junction, the largest city in western Colorado, has jumped into the race. And she may give him a run for the money, but he started so early and he raised so much money, it'll be very difficult for anyone to compete with him. He's raised money from all 50 states.
Yeah, they can do that. And Parker has another question. Thank you, Parker, for a second question. So, sort of like how Charlie Crist, who I actually know who that is, switched to being a Democrat in Florida in order to run against DeSantis in 2022. He was a Republican. Right. Oh my goodness, I just realized that.
Yeah. If we end up with a rematch between Adam Frisch and Lauren Boebert, it will basically be a contest between a moderate Republican in Democratic clothing and an extreme lunatic fringe MAGA Republican in Lauren Boebert. The district in the past has been a lean Republican district, so it was a relatively safe district for the Republicans. But I think Lauren Boebert has been seen as so extreme that some people crossed the aisle and voted for Adam Frisch in the last election. And he avoids talking about issues. He just attacks his opponent.
Well, is it okay? Read Parker's comment, and then I'm gonna follow it up with my next question. So yeah, I actually remember Sol Sandoval. I remember she was endorsed by the Working Families Party, and I wanted her to win the Democratic nomination last election in the Colorado primary. So now here comes my question: don't they all buy seats? I mean, literally. I mean, if you're running for office at that level, pretty much, unless you're just some special person that I don't know about, you're buying the seat. I mean, that's what the two-party system does. Have you ever heard? He says he's your opponent. Have you ever heard him talk about? I'm pretty sure people in Colorado are hurting financially and would like some more money in their pockets. Grocery prices probably are high. I don't know. I live in Indiana, so I don't know what the prices are out there. Have you ever heard him talk about any of those issues? Probably not. And it's intentional. All you got to do, here's the Democratic point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that guy.
Right.
Don't say anything else, but once I get there, I'm going to vote exactly like they voted. But I'm not that guy.
Right.
So we're going to get worked either way.
Yes.
But you can't vote because a vote for Gary Swing is a vote for Lauren Boebert.
That's right. Exactly. Adam Frisch is also the first candidate who's been endorsed by the No Labels Party, which is basically a dark money operation that is bankrolled by fossil fuel interests and investment firms. He's gotten their seal of approval as their first candidate for 2024. He really is a corporate representative, not a representative of the people.
So he's a typical Democrat.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, okay, he sounds just about like the rest of them.
Right. This will probably be one of the most expensive congressional races in the country in 2024 because it was so close in the last election and the district is rated as a toss-up. I would say that it's not necessarily true that all seats at this level are determined by money, because most of the seats are really determined by demographics. Most districts, as you mentioned, are gerrymandered so that one party dominates over another party. So in most districts, you know that the Republican will win, or you know that the Democrat will win, and the other candidate is token opposition. There are a very small number of districts that really are competitive, even between the Democrats and the Republicans. This is one of the few districts now that is competitive between the two major parties. So a lot of money, a lot of campaign efforts will be put into this particular district.
And now you've brought me up to my point that I think, to be honest, I think it's the craziest idea I've ever heard of. But you make the best campaign decision for yourself. Certainly, I couldn't do it. You've decided to run as close as you can a $0 campaign.
That's right.
Talk about what that is, why you did it, and I'll talk about why I think. But how? I'll just be quiet and let you talk.
Right. I'm looking at the money that's being spent on this, and even if I did do fundraising, I would be outspent 10,000 to 1, 100,000 to 1. I know I can't win. I don't expect to break 1% of the vote, but in this district, if I get 0.5% of the vote, that could be perceived as changing the outcome of the election and could bring attention to challenging the system itself. What I'm planning to do with the $0 campaign, which I've done in past elections, is I have a free campaign website. I answer candidate surveys. So I'll be in the various newspapers with my responses to candidate surveys. If you look on websites like Politics One, which provides links to candidate websites for congressional races and statewide offices across the country, you can find out who's running for each district in each state. My information is out there on the internet for anyone who bothers to research the candidates. So if people want to cast a protest vote, if they don't like the nominees of the Democratic and Republican parties, we have all the information in the world on our laptops, on our cell phones. You can see what each person has to say for themselves by looking it up on the internet. So I plan to run an internet-based campaign. I have a platform on my website. I have a rationale for why I'm doing this. I've been in various newspapers for the last election for Secretary of State. I was in the League of Women Voters video candidate forum. It was not televised, unfortunately. It was the only forum that had all 6 candidates for Secretary of State, and it was not televised. But there is a video of it on the Colorado League of Women Voters website where you can see what each of the candidates have to say about election reform issues. So this provides some platform if we're talking about election reform, if we're talking about opposing war, if we're talking about environmental issues. But I know coming into this, and I know from the history of alternative parties in the United States, I'm not going to win. And I see year after year that people who support alternative parties have unrealistic expectations of what the outcome is going to be. People hope against hope that their candidate will win. But if you look back at the election results, you'll see that alternative party candidates typically get single-digit vote results, if that, sometimes less than that. And alternative parties are not represented in state legislatures or Congress. We don't have alternative party candidates being elected president or to statewide office. So I know, on the one hand, you have people who have unrealistic expectations who say, why aren't you doing more? And I say, because I know I'm not going to win. So I'm not taking people's money because I'm not going to be elected. I know that. So I have other ways to get my message out that don't require spending money on the campaign. And also, if the Democrat and the Republican spend $10 million each trying to get elected to a seat in Congress, and I spend $0, and the Democrats are accusing me of spoiling their $10 million campaign with a $0 internet campaign where I'm saying, I know I'm not going to win. Doesn't that say something about how absurd our election system is?
Yep. And say that website one more time. Well, I'm not going to remember it. Message me that website so
Okay.
I can visit it because I'd love to just see it. So Parker has more comments. Thank you, Parker. So he says, I think a lot of people don't even know how conservative Adam Schiff. See, I was going to say Schiff. Adam Frisch is because the only thing that people focus on is Lauren Boebert, since she basically has the Trump effect of taking up all the attention. True. Ballotpedia is a good site for that info too, and they have a candidate fill out surveys, I think.
Yes, I'm on the Ballotpedia surveys. So if you look up Ballotpedia, Colorado Congressional District 3, you'll find that I've answered a candidate survey with their questions there. David Karpus, who's a less known Democratic candidate, has answered their candidate surveys. Adam Frisch, and I don't think Lauren Boebert, I don't think either of them have answered the Ballotpedia candidate questions, at least for 2024.
It seems so unfair.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing you've described.
Yes.
That you have to take this position to get your, because, well, let me rephrase my question. Because I think, oh, well, no, I'm going to scrap that question. I'll answer it like this. This is a hypothetical question.
Mm-hmm.
What if you win?
I'll demand a recount.
Okay, I didn't expect that answer. Like I said, I've never. It's hard for me to get that concept to run and to know I'm going to lose. I can't even. Even coming up with my own. I'm going to run for city council because I'm really thinking about it. I don't think it's fair for me to have all these supporters, and I'm certain that you have. Are you the only one running your campaign?
Well, my friend Jesse may be helping me out a bit.
Okay, so you have at least one other person.
Yes.
But if you had like 10 volunteers,
mm-hmm.
I would think, well, that's unfair to them. Why am I, but at least you're not wasting people's time. You told people, hey, I'm not going to win. But again, I'm not, I guess I'm trying to well, he knows he's not going to win. Why not just vote for the other two? Because at least, and I'm just thinking this out loud, at least, they're running to win. But you're running not to win. And as a matter of fact, you said if you did win out of some pie in the sky, it's all going to end, everything's gone, and it's tearing down, you would demand a recount. So how do you convince people, or are you even trying to convince people to vote for you?
Actually, now that you mention it, I don't actually ask people to vote for me. All I ask is that people vote their conscience if they choose to participate in the election. And if they choose not to participate in the election because they don't feel represented, that's also a valid choice. No one is required to vote for anyone or anything they don't want. But if they do vote, I encourage people to vote their conscience. If people want to support my campaign, rather than sending me money, I encourage people to write letters to the editor, write letters to their representatives, and say what they want. If you support the idea of proportional representation, write letters saying you support proportional representation. If you want to send money to the group Best Democracy, do that. bestdemocracy.org. They're an organization promoting proportional representation. I'm also a spokesperson for Best Democracy, but money to Best Democracy won't go to me. It just goes to promote the message. You can also
go ahead. I'm sorry, because I'm just
send
like,
money
okay, I'm trying to think this.
You can send money to the Unity Party to donate to help them maintain ballot access, to maintain their operating costs. But I'm trying not to have operating costs for my campaign.
So you don't even have a treasurer.
I don't even have a treasurer. I haven't filed anything. I don't have a campaign account, a bank account.
So literally, if I'm in Colorado in the western part of the state, I would be writing your name in. Is that right?
No, I would be on the ballot.
Okay, so you are on the ballot. Okay.
Ah.
Because Indiana has some of the dumbest ballot access. How did you get on the ballot?
Okay, we have a process where the Unity Party nominates candidates by party assembly. It's a recognized political party only in the state of Colorado. In the spring of next year, we will have a party assembly. It's an open meeting. Anyone can attend, whether they're a party member or not. People who have been registered with the party for at least 2 months before the assembly can vote on candidates. Anyone who registers as a member of the party by the date of the assembly is eligible to be a candidate. So I'm not nominated yet. I will be up for nomination next year. And then any candidate who gets at least 30% of the vote at a state assembly qualifies at least for a primary ballot. If we have more than 2 candidates who qualify for a given office, we can have a primary. Or in practice, what we do is we offer the second place candidate the chance to say they'd like to be a candidate for a different office. And then we have 2 candidates on the ballot in the general election for different offices instead of a contested primary for a tiny party. So I'm not yet the nominee of the Unity Party, and anyone is free to run for any office with the Unity Party and pitch their message at our state assembly next March or April, whenever the meeting ends up being scheduled. But then
re-election 2024?
2024. This is for 2024.
Okay. I was like, wait a minute. It's the same years. Okay. Years. Yeah, because ours is different. Yeah, ours is just okay. Got it. Yeah. I just was like, wait a minute. Is it? So you're not the nominee now.
Not now. I'm filed with the Federal Election Commission as a candidate seeking the Unity Party's nomination for the third.
Okay, I understand. So here comes the next question. Okay. So if you do not get the nomination, obviously you wouldn't be disappointed because your goal is, again, not to win. Your goal is to raise the issue. How much support would you give to the candidate running for the same office that you just lost?
If it's a candidate who I would support, then I would write letters to the editor supporting them. I might go out and help with whatever they decide to do to promote their campaign. If I came in second or third, assuming we had a contested nomination, I would not go to a primary. I would ask to be nominated for a different office instead. Part of my role as secretary of the Unity Party is that I want to encourage more candidates to run. I want to recruit more candidates. And if that means recruiting someone to run against me, that's fine. And if I like that candidate, maybe I'll support them and I'll run for some other seat. There's plenty of seats we can have candidates run for. It doesn't have to be the one I'm announced for.
Again, I'm trying to get past this. I'm really trying here. I'm really trying here because I'm like, well, okay. I'll ask this question again. I'll ask another question.
Okay.
Do you see the Unity Party expanding outside the state of Colorado?
Technically, we do have a national party organization, and some paperwork has been filed in Massachusetts and in Florida, but we don't have practical ballot access elsewhere. The Unity Party was started as a centrist political party, but we had state legislators in Colorado in 2019 and 2021 passed ballot access restrictions that made it much harder for independent candidates to get on the ballot in Colorado. The Unity Party opened up its nomination process to encourage more independents and free thinkers to come out and seek our nomination. And when that happened, that's when we had a lot more candidates on the ballot. I think we had 12 candidates on the ballot with the Unity Party line in Colorado in 2020, and then 8 in 2022. So whether you're a socialist, whether you're a constitutional conservative, whether you're libertarian, a green who's been shut out of the Green Party's process, you can come pitch your message to the Unity Party and have a chance to get on the ballot. And it's a way to get around the state's restrictions on independent candidates, because a vastly increased number of petition signatures required for independents to get on the ballot. But if you run with the Unity Party, you don't need any petition signatures. We're already a qualified party in the state. Each state has its own ballot access laws. It's a Byzantine labyrinth of some really weird restrictions. The US has some of the most restrictive ballot access laws of any country in the world. In some states, it's not so bad. In some places, it just makes more sense if you want to be a protest candidate to pay, say, a $200 filing fee and get on the ballot as a Democrat or Republican, say in the Wyoming primary for Congress, where it's really hard to get in as an independent or as a candidate of a non-recognized party. So there is some effort to build the Unity Party as a national organization. I think we really lack the resources and the organization to effectively do that. And outside of Colorado, we're also being rather displaced, I think, by the Forward Party. The Forward Party is sort of starting at the same place that the Unity Party started years ago, except that they have media celebrities and money backing them. The Unity Party is more of a shoestring operation. We're established in Colorado, and we could create unity parties in other states if there's interest locally in doing that. I think it would be misguided to put a lot of emphasis from the outside on, say, going to other states where we don't have interest and trying to petition the party onto the ballot. If you don't have candidates who want to run with your party already in your state, why do you want to overextend your resources and try to build something where you don't have a base? I think that's an issue that the Greens have had. The Greens put so much emphasis on the presidential campaign and trying to get on the ballot in as many states as they can, even if they don't have any local candidates. And there are states where they do have a lot of local candidates, like Connecticut, Maine. They're pretty well established there. But other states, they require tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of petition signatures to get a new party on the ballot. And at some point, I think you need to recognize the absurdity of the system. And if you can't even be a protest candidate without being a write-in, consider filing as a Democrat or Republican as a protest candidate in their primary. Because some states, it's so much easier to get on the ballot as a major party candidate than as a minor party candidate. And that's just
you would think that, but boy, I had a candidate. She was a Democrat, and let's put it this way: there are two candidates in Indiana I can name that ran as Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Party said, no, we want this person, and that person was the one that got on the ballot.
Right.
So it can happen. Not to say your idea is out there, but it does. The system is rigged. I mean, that's the thing that you're saying, and I definitely agree with that. And I wanted to have you on to talk about that. Again, I'm still trying to get the zero campaign in my head, and the fact that you're saying, no, I'm not running to win, because, again, I'm not used to hearing that. But I do want to know if someone wanted, not support your campaign, because, again, you're not asking people to vote for you. You're asking people to vote their conscience.
Right.
And I said, what if you're their conscience and they vote for you and somebody you win, you would definitely ask for a recount. Again, I've never heard that answer, but to each their own. If someone wanted to volunteer to get the movement that you're talking about started, what would you say to them?
The Unity Party can certainly use volunteers. We will have a lot of candidates. I hope we'll have a lot of candidates. I know we have several people already declared for various offices, or people who have expressed interest in running for candidates are not announced for yet. Best Democracy can certainly use volunteers. We can certainly use help with internet technology, with outreach through social media. That would be a lot of help. Bestdemocracy.org is the organization online that is promoting proportional representation for the United States. Best Democracy can certainly use a lot of help. It's basically a very small number of people working to promote this idea, and certainly need help. I am joking about demanding a recount.
Okay, I'm hoping so. I'm like, please say he's joking. just say you're joking, because I'm thinking if I win, it's it. This is about to happen.
I do think if I were elected that I would be a more qualified candidate than either Adam Frisch or Lauren Boebert.
Well, that goes without saying.
Unlike the major Democrats running, I do have a campaign platform. I do stand for something, not just vote for me. I'm not Lauren Boebert. I have an appropriate educational background. I have a bachelor's degree in political science. I have a master's degree in public administration. I've been involved in alternative party politics for decades. I've seen how it doesn't work. I've seen how people tried to make it work. I think even if I were elected to Congress, I'd still be a protest candidate, basically. I would get up and I'd get to make speeches. I'd get to vote against bills, and I might be the only person voting against war crimes in one country one day, another country the next day. But I'd be there to speak out for what I believe in. And I think that there's some value in that. For people to take a stand, even if they don't feel that they have the backing to win or to get their issues passed.
Well, Gary, I said it was going to be an hour, and it's an hour. I was like, okay, I'm going to try, but I never succeed, so I stopped trying. Tell us your website and the Unity Party's website.
Unityparty.us, I think, is the address. But if you Google Unity Party in the United States, you'll find it. My website is a bit long. It's a free website on Wix. It's https:// which you need, or otherwise it won't come up. Then small letters, The Swing Vote. .wix.com/unity.
Oh, okay. Get it tiny.
Yeah.
Get one of those tiny website
right.
things and just be like, this is it.
Yeah,
but I definitely won't remember that.
Right. That's a complicated website address. But if you go to Politics One for the Colorado page, they list all the candidates for Congress. They have links to all the candidate websites. So you can go there and not just look at my website. You can look at what the Democrats and the Republicans have to say. There's apparently a libertarian who's entered the race now, too. I just saw that earlier today. You can look at the statewide offices, and they have links to all the presidential candidates from every party. It's a nonpartisan information source.
And what is that website again?
That is www.politics1, the number
one or spelled out?
The number one.
Okay. Thank you. Well, everybody, I have certainly been taken aback. Had my first candidate that's ever said, no, I'm not trying to win, but that's okay. That's the type of diversity that we offer. So I will be doing this again. I will be doing another special show on Saturday. This Saturday, I will be interviewing, I know his name, and we'll have his picture up on the website. So remember to subscribe to this page. Please subscribe. I'm at 126. I would love to have 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. It's one of my goals. Please help me get to it. Subscribe. Remember to like this video, share this video, and remember to visit all the sites that Gary had. So I'll try to remember them and go back to them and edit them into this after it is broadcasted. If you see this later and you want to comment, please do. We had viewers, but only Parker commented, so that's okay. That's perfectly okay. But you can always comment at a later time. Thank you, Gary, for coming on and talking about an issue that literally I had never thought of, but I'm thinking about it now. So I
Thank you,
thank you
Tracy.
for that. Thank you for giving us the education that we needed. Thank everybody for watching and have a fantastic evening.
Thank you, Tracy.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome.